Psychologist Carl Jung first defined introversion as energy coming from within. Think of personal energy as if it were a battery. Extroverts charge their batteries by being with people, while introverts draw their power from going within. That is, an introvert is someone who is energized by quiet, alone time and, conversely, feels drained by social engagement. By the way, did you know that almost half the population identifies as introverts? Hello, I'm Michelle Pascoe, and welcome to my podcast. That's an excerpt from my guest today, Jennifer Kahnweiler. So, Jennifer B. Kahnweiler is a best-selling author, podcast host, and one of the leading experts on introverts at work. Her pioneering book, The Introverted Leader, quite influenced the genius of opposites and creating introvert-friendly workplaces, have been translated into 18 languages. And today's episode has been sparked by her third edition of The Introverted Leader. But we'll get to that a little bit more in a moment. The Introverted Leader was named one of the top 5 business books by the Shanghai Daily. Jennifer has partnered with leading organizations like NASA, Amazon, Merck, Kimberly-Clark, Bosch, and the US Centers for Disease Control. She holds the Certified Speaking Professional designation, awarded to a small percentage of speakers, and serves as a mentor to many professional business women. Jennifer loves yoga, pickleball, and competing with her husband Bill playing Jeopardy. And I met Jennifer many years ago when she came down all the way from America to Australia, because as Australians know, we don't mind traveling, but the rest of the world find it's a very long haul, 13 hours. It's not that bad. But she is from the East Coast over in Atlanta. So we met here at the professional speakers here in Australia, and our friendship has blossomed over all those years. And this is my third time I've had Jennifer on my podcast, because what she's going to share with you today, although she's not an introvert, she's an extrovert, is why she cares so much about introverts in the workplace. Welcome, Jennifer. And so thank you so much for being part of my podcast today.
Michelle, it's such a pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you, and the miracle of Zoom brings us together. So thrilled to see you almost in person.
Yes, yeah. Well, we were nearly a week ago from before recording this Zoom, and we were both in Scottsdale, Arizona at the National Speakers Association conference.
Right.
And it's wonderful when, as you said, we've seen each other for many, many years over Zoom and different emails, is we're walking on the hallway, and then it's, there you are in person, which is fantastic. And here we are talking about the heat, and we're nice and cold. But let's get on talking about the introvert. When you're an extrovert, why do you care so much about introverts in the workplace?
Well, they say, Michelle, your passion and your interest in topics comes from what you're struggling with or what you're challenged with. And as I've told people the story many times, but just kind of the short version is married many years ago. We just had our 52nd, I forget how many years it's been. I know. Can you believe that? Anniversary. And Bill and I met my husband, Bill, in college. And, and he was such a quiet, calm antidote to my sort of extroversion. I shouldn't say sort of, but it was. I grew up in a family from New York, and we were, the culture was to be very outgoing and extroverted in my family and in the area I grew up in. And meeting Bill kind of helped me take that breath, that calm down, sort of just chill, and it was a nice, as we find many times, introverts and extroverts do attract. It is the polar opposites. Now, the challenge became after we were together a while and moved into getting married. I was a young bride and he was a young groom. That's when the things that attracted you so much to somebody start to irritate a little bit. And one of those was, we would be together and being, let's say, at a social occasional, and then he would go back to, we would go back home, and he would just completely shut down, like no talking, nothing, nada. And I was I didn't understand about personality differences other than what I intuitively guessed. And I thought, of course, it was about me, and that he was angry, or he was frustrated. Bill, what's wrong? What's wrong? Which, of course, later, Michelle, I learned you really should never say that to an introvert. And why? Because nothing was wrong. because he was in his head and he needed to recharge the battery. And that's, as
Mm.
we know, one of the main indicators of what introvert separates introverts and extroverts. It's a scale of stimulation,
Right.
introverts. So that was the original
Mm.
impetus. And then as I started moving into the workplace more, I was fortunate enough early on to be introduced to the concept of introversion extroversion through because I was doing counseling. I got my degrees in that and I took the Myers-Briggs, and it was a big aha, like a lot of people
Right.
have when they
Mm.
take an assessment like that, and they're
Yes.
like,
Yes.
oh, that explains it, and that explains why we've been having friction.
Mm.
And so back then, it helped a lot, and I was able to then use that knowledge in the many positions that I had after that, and kept coming across the introverts in my work, many of them in technology, but in so many fields, in hospitality, like
Yes.
you and I were talking about. It didn't matter what, they were feeling like something was wrong with them. And my real message was nothing's wrong with you.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to just leverage and use and get in touch with your strengths, and let's use those to be
Yes.
successful.
So how interesting. I always love it and asking people how they started their business. You've had a very
Yeah.
successful business for so many
Mhm.
decades, and it all started because you married somebody.
That exactly right. Exactly right. And with my business, as you and I are also professional speakers,
Mm.
I was doing coaching for a long time, career
Yeah.
coaching. And
Right.
I would constantly come across people who were so unhappy in their job because that one dimension, that introversion extrovert, had not been in their, awareness when they were choosing which path to go. I can't tell me how many unhappy lawyers I came across, who were in the part of law that didn't use their talent. So, that
Yeah.
it was through coaching, and it was through what we did training. I did a lot of leadership training and speaking.
Yes.
I remember with one guy in a training class I was teaching, and he was just kind of going along, but you could tell he wasn't really into it. And I approached him and asked him, I said, Shawn, what's going on? Are you getting it? It was a leadership class. And he said, no, I'm getting it all, but I'm never going to advance at my company. I'm never going to be a manager, Jennifer. Everybody moves very fast. They talk fast. There's
Mm.
no room for my input, So these kind of examples just kept piling up, Michelle,
Yes.
over and
Yes.
over and over again. And I looked for resources to support my clients,
Mm.
and there wasn't a lot. So I started to take notes, write articles, and ultimately decided to write my first book.
Mm. And so when was that first book? When did that come out?
It came out in 2009. And
Gosh.
that's, I know. What are we now? So it's 15 years,
Yes.
right? From
Yes.
what we are now.
Mm.
And everybody would say to me, "What do you mean the introverted leader? That's an oxymoron." Actually, our other covers were, I don't know if you could see, but I've got a
Yes.
cover, a Superman with an eye. It was a little macho, so I changed that one. But yeah, nobody ever said, you can't, how could you be, people were just perplexed. How could you be a leader and be an introvert? And I would bring
Yes.
up all these examples
Mm.
and share the introverts I knew who were successful in not changing into being another version of themselves, but amplifying those listening strengths, the preparation,
Yes.
taking
Yes.
quiet time, all of these things. So it was very gratifying. So that book first came out 2009, the first edition. And then right after that, many people, and you may be familiar with the book Quiet, came out with
Yes.
Susan
Mm.
Cain. And she had one of the most watched TED Talks. And I was fortunate enough to get to know Susan a little bit in the beginning, and it was really great because my books and my trainings, I've written 4 books on this topic with several editions. 17, how many languages? 17 languages.
Mm.
So it really did. That first book is still the bestseller, so that's why we got the
Wow.
third edition.
Yes.
But what Susan would do, she opened up the gates, on a wide scale across the world. And then people wanted to know, okay, so what would be some practical things when I go back to work? And that's where my work came in. So she was very kind. And I shared her chapter, she shared mine. We did a lot of collaboration in those early days. And, we're still opening the door, and
Mm.
it's much more open now on people even using the term introvert, understanding what it is. I'm
Yes.
very gratified when I go most weeks now. I will hear the term either used when I'm out in public or on media, and sometimes it's misinterpreted,
Yeah.
but nobody spoke about it before.
No.
And so people are stepping into their power. I'm
Mm.
calling it the introvert revolution.
Very good. And you're right, that's stepping into their power. So I have been aware of Myers-Briggs for years, but I'm a disc person and, been a trainer and assessor of that
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
nearly 20 years. And exactly what you're saying there is that people don't have to change the way that they are. It's adapting and understanding. And particularly if you're an introvert or an extrovert, is
Mhm.
how do we get the best out of that person? But also, how do I communicate with them? And you were saying
Yes.
in your opening pages of your book there that half of the workforce is introverts. And in the
Mhm.
hospitality industry, we have so many, like we've got 4 generations now working in the hospitality industry where they're having to deal with 6 generations of customers of all different beliefs and values and personality types, behaviors, and certainly that introvert and extrovert. So, have you got any ideas on all your research that you've done over these decades,
Mhm.
Jennifer, on how do we, if we're a frontline person and we're an
Yeah.
introvert, because the hospitality industry, I always see is like being on the stage. The curtains are open, the lights are on, and it's smile time, and you're there to make everybody feel great and that they've made the right
Right.
decision to come to you. But if you're somebody who doesn't feel the pep all the time, how do you keep that? How do you show it outwardly? And what are
Yeah.
some tips perhaps to recharge those batteries?
Oh, I love it. I just came back from a vacation, so and I knew I was going to be on this podcast. So I had a different lens. I had the Michelle lens on, the way you go out to eat at restaurants and you notice things. And I actually talked with the general manager of this inn we were staying with because he disclosed that he was an introvert.
Mm,
And one of the things that is very important for anybody in a frontline position is, first of all, to know yourself and
mm,
know what you need and know when that battery is getting low, because that's the time you're going to get exhausted when you're dealing with people.
mm.
And you're gonna probably do things you're not happy about later. And you're going to go home just depleted.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is really incumbent upon leaders too, to recognize in terms of their scheduling, in terms of knowing when the peak times are, when people are going to be needing even a short break. And
Yes.
we see this in healthcare too, where there's a constant, need to be out there. I think what I'd like people to think about is that a couple of things. One is that your strength as an introvert is the one-on-one connection with people. Maybe you don't like going into a crowd, or when you got the lines of people checking in. Remember that that customer and you are having that interaction,
Mm.
and you are such a good listener that you will pick up on concerns, also on positive things as well.
Yes.
You can guide your customer to the kind of do I not call them customers? What would you say when you're in hospitality?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
But
yes.
you can
I
call them
said
customers,
customer.
that's fine.
Yeah, but I like guests better. You're the guest. So you're listening, let's say at the front desk, for what is it that they want to know about?
Mm.
Maybe the Wi-Fi is essential for them. So you want to make sure, sure you have your checklist, tell them where the elevators are and all that. But you need to also think about, well, even making a little rapport building. Oh,
Yeah.
how is your day going so far? That kind of thing. And having some of those questions ready so that you don't have to be exhausted
Yes.
thinking of
Yes.
them. It's
Yes.
almost like a little script you have in your head, and I recommend people do that at networking receptions too. So I think that's definitely an important piece of it. That listening and knowing that one-on-one is where you shine.
Mm.
The extrovert, as great as they are at winging it and having being able to have the gift of gab, as we say, you're going to miss out on that guest and
Yes.
connecting with them truly. And I watch my husband when we're traveling and how he connects with the people at the front desk, or at the, in the customer facing situations, because he's very quiet, but he also has a sense of humor. So
Mm.
they connect. The introvert, he connects through that. So don't forget about that. You can gauge, you understand, perhaps there's a joke that can be made, maybe
Yeah.
not, but again, your read of people is so good because you are focusing in. Does that make sense to you, Michelle? Do
Yeah.
you notice that?
Definitely. And I know
Yeah.
with the leaders that I work with across the hospitality industry, like yourself, Jennifer, you're there in front of them and you can just see all the different personalities, all that introvert, extrovert coming out, and those ones a little bit quieter. And then it's having that conversation afterwards, as you did with Shawn, going, so tell me, how you find it, where do you see? I just think it's
Yeah.
a shame when you gave us that story about Shawn that he felt there wasn't a position of him in
Mhm.
management. And perhaps there are other introverts that feel that way as
Yes.
well. And I'm not just perhaps, but I'm sure there are. So what can we give them to guide them, like you did with Shawn, to say, don't don't pull back?
Yeah.
What can
Yeah.
they do to
That,
be seen by management?
right. Well, there's a couple of things, it's been very interesting, Michelle, doing this podcast I've had going for a while, the Introvert Ally, and talking primarily with introverts about what has been um, your ace in the hole, what has really helped you a lot. And one of the things that it was kind of surprising, if it's to be, it's up to me. Doug
Right.
Conant says that a
Mm.
lot. So you can't expect people to be mind readers.
No.
So it's important that we do schedule times with our leaders and our managers to explain how to get the best out of us, you
Yes.
know? And so saying, for instance, back to my earlier point, can we work my schedule out so I can just go outside or take a breather,
Mm.
look at a tree.
Yes.
So I recharge. Because I need that.
Yes. Yes.
Whatever it is that you really need, and then find out how your manager likes to communicate. So,
Mm.
but I think a lot of times introverts sort of wait, because they
Mm.
are a little bit more laid back and they've also been burned a lot, you
Yes.
know,
Mm.
and feel like there isn't a safe, psychologically safe even environment for them. So, but that's one part of it. But I think the culture is one in which, where you're accepted or you're not.
Yes.
If
Yes.
the leader, either your immediate boss or the senior leaders are giving the message that it's okay to be a different, a way that you are,
Mm.
then that gives you so much more freedom to
Yes.
operate within a larger bandwidth. So you don't feel the pressure, like as you say, you're on stage.
Yes. Mm.
Interestingly, I've had other introverts say to me, many have said to me, or a number, Jennifer, I will smile just so people don't think that I'm angry.
Yes.
Now, I do an exercise in some of my trainings where I say to people, okay, I'd like everybody to smile, and I have them hold it for like a minute. And I was like, how do you feel now? Well, that's exhausting. So we don't want to do that all the time, but that's another arsenal, something in your toolkit
Yes.
that you can do when you're acting as if,
Mm.
you're happy. And you're also matching the guest, aren't you?
Yes. Very
In
much
terms
so.
of what they're needing. So your ability to tune in, to listen, to be calm, to not be talking over them.
Yes. Mm.
It's interesting because even if there's pressure, and let's say there's a long check-in line, we still need to allow that few seconds of silence if that's going to give the guest a chance to express themselves.
Yes.
And a
Yes.
lot of times, if you have an introverted person behind the desk, they tend to, as extroverts, unless we really work on this, we're uncomfortable
Mm. Yes.
silent. So we will fill in.
Yes.
Does this resonate, Michelle?
Yeah. Just keep talking. Just keep talking.
Take a breath, and extroverts will have all kinds of ways to do this in the meeting that,
Yes.
that you're having with your staff. Sometimes extroverts, I've had them say, they just like hold themselves, kind of have like
Yes.
an anchor to like, okay, I'm going to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak before I butt in.
Yes.
Or I'm going to just pause. And I think was it Socrates? I always quote the wrong person. I think it was him, one of those. I'm not going to swear by it, but one of the Greek folks said, nature abhors a vacuum. Nature
Uh,
abhors a vacuum. So something is going to fill in,
yes. Yes.
in that. So I hope some of that makes sense.
It does, and it's so true. I love it when you hear, CEO says, "Oh, says, Michelle, I've had the staff, love you to be involved," and I sit down before I do my 40 minutes, presentation about the creating the memorable experiences, and they get up there and they go, "Okay, so I'd like you to have a think about what we're going to do with this space out there," and he literally gives them, or they should just say him, would give 5 minutes, and it's somebody, and they're sitting there, and you can see half of them are like deers in the, headlights going, You gave us no
Right.
warning. We don't even know. And you can see those, what you would say, that introvert and that high C person in disc of thinking to themselves,
Yeah.
I think this is a great idea, but I need some time to think about it. And then the CEO after 5 minutes goes, okay, oh wait, no, and then they just take over, and they probably haven't even given them 5 minutes because they're so excited with the idea that they've got, which is probably
Yeah.
a very great idea. But then that person will sit back, that introvert perhaps, and think to themselves, well, I never got a chance to say because we've moved on. We've gone on to the next point now. And they've not had an opportunity to say, look, I think that's a great idea, but could I find out some more detail? Could you perhaps add this to it? Can I have a
Yes.
conversation? Because they're just railroaded, because we just don't like silence. It
Right.
has
And
to
we're
be.
excited. And that's one of our assets as extroverts. I don't want to bash the extroverts. The extroverts bring a lot of energy, enthusiasm, new ideas. On the disc,
Yes.
you would call that, I think, what the S and
Yeah. And the
the
I. I is
and
very
the
much,
I. The
yes.
I is a lot of ideas, and we get so taken away. But we've left the team behind. Really, we've
Yes.
left the team behind. So one tip that I learned from Chuck, this manager named Chuck, is he said, I learned if it's not an urgent decision that has to be made, what I like to do is separate the brainstorming input
Mm.
time from the decision making time. So, to your point, Michelle, to give people a chance to reflect, to analyze, to just let it, introverts need time for it to percolate. So, even if
Yes.
it was the next day, he also said the surprising thing and what he was grateful for is that extroverts gave him better, well thought out
Mm.
reactions. So it
Yeah.
helped everybody. It wasn't just the introverts. So
Yeah.
no, that's a really good example that you're giving about
Mm.
that. So yeah, and the other thing is, if there are introverted leaders in your organization, you should start to spotlight them and
Yes.
have them be transparent about it.
Mm.
Like one of the things we do is fireside chats a lot with leaders who are introverted, who say, here's what I've struggled with in our type A society, because we're still fighting a lot of, bias. The
Yeah.
world we live in Western society, not it's somewhat in Eastern, but more in Western, it's very type A. It's very like go, go, go. And there's
Yes.
not a place for the introverts. So let the introverted leaders talk and let them engage and let them share. These are some things that have worked for me.
Mm.
Here's where a challenge, a hurdle was,
Mm.
when I was asked all of a sudden to give a quick answer, and I needed time to think about what did I say? Very tactical things to
Yes.
help people with.
Mm.
But you don't want to lose your introverts' hospitality. They are needed. Introverts are definitely needed, especially with the pressure now to perform.
Yes.
Where you see general managers checking like every comment on TripAdvisor. Isn't
Mm.
that
That's right.
true,
Yes,
right?
yeah, they do. And they respond to it, which is great. And it's not ignoring the comments that perhaps some people may see as negative because it may well give them a different set of eyes. So, oh, is that how it's seen as well?
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
important for them to connect with all those different people coming through the door. And as you
Yeah.
said right at the start, Jennifer, it's
Yeah.
understanding we can cover a whole spectrum of saying, hi, welcome, this is fantastic. But having that one-on-one with somebody makes them
Mhm.
feel really comfortable. And when you were talking about how do we communicate,
Well,
I
can I
know that,
let me just throw in one
yeah,
one
sure.
observation I had at this last place we stayed at. It's happened at a couple of like higher end places. I don't know why it can't happen in some of the others, but I understand there isn't always the resource for that. But they had pictures they had taken of us, and I think a lot of hotels. You might tell me this or not, and they did know our names. Many of them knew our names. It's like, Jennifer, how's your day going? So it doesn't mean that every hotel is going to be able to do that or every hospitality situation, but I think that just says when you learn people's names, right? Or you just follow up. You don't even have to know their names. So did that situation work out for you? Or
Yes.
you said you were going out to that play. How was it? Making it more personal.
Mm.
That's going to make that customer or that guest come back.
Definitely. And look, you looking at the photo like that, I think with LinkedIn, I know I've been to a number of hotels and I've already looked at LinkedIn and they'll know who you are. And I will admit the first time I thought, oh, this is a bit creepy. But then I realized, I mean, how
But
do
Michelle, they know what you do too. They want to make sure they're on their
yeah, I
best
think,
behavior.
yeah. Oh,
It's
hello,
one of those a hidden shopper or whatever they call mystery
mystery
shopper.
shoppers. Yeah, they go,
I
oh,
don't think you're a mystery though in Australia anymore for sure, and
no,
probably not in California.
No, not with my voice. Everybody knows that they hear me with my um, but it's so true. It's we can use their names, and it was interesting. I was actually
Yeah,
watching CBN News yesterday here in Australia. It
yeah,
was early hours of the morning, and it was saying the top trends for 2025, particularly for school age children, our alphas as well as our Gen Z, is personalization on the. It was going back to school because you're going back to school there in the US
yeah,
about personalization of all the items in the thing. The second was Crocs, but that's a different story. But Crocs are the new best thing,
mm, okay,
which I thought was okay. But anyway, the grandchildren are into that. But what was interesting is that's what young children are looking for, that personalization. But that is what we're all looking for. And when it
yeah,
comes to yes, you've got a name badge on. You may have looked on LinkedIn or got their photograph, but what you've got in front of you is their credit card or their license or their passport. Use
hmm,
the name. Even, I know they say to my clients, even if it's a name that may have multiple letters
still
in their
work.
last name, give it a
Yeah,
go. It doesn't matter.
yeah,
Like your name, Kahnweiler. I always make sure I'm
yes,
pronouncing it correctly. If I don't,
yeah,
I'm sure I'm not the first person who's asked you, oh,
right.
have I said that correctly? And people don't mind. But what it does is make that instant connection. I know every place that we stopped in the US over the last 10 days was, oh, you're not from here. And then where are you from? And you go Australia. Now, all of them have either heard something about a kangaroo or they know somebody in Australia or they just love our accent. But it was
Yes,
a conversation that you don't
yes,
mind when you're traveling overseas when people go, oh, you must be, oh, that's lovely. And it's that a little, they're still checking you in, they're still taking
yes,
their order, they're still getting
right.
you your drinks, but they're making it a little bit more about you. And so when you're talking about
Yes.
that communication piece, it really got me thinking because when I'm training, I say to my leaders, the first question you should be asking somebody who's trained is, how do you learn best? Is it through writing?
Yes.
Is it by watching?
Yes.
Is it trying to? But I'm actually going to add that piece in is how do you communicate best?
Hmm,
And then we
hmm.
can learn, and that's where we can really understand because our front line are our people, whether it's in retail, whether it's in corporate, doesn't matter. Those people are those that are needing to connect with our customers or our prospective customers. So when we find out how is the best way they communicate, we can match them up with certain clients that perhaps they may be taking over somebody else's portfolio or projects, but also, as you were saying, as a leader, gives us that opportunity to really think, Jennifer. Okay, so
Hmm.
that's how they like to communicate. How am I going to, as you correctly said, spotlight them in the meeting? How can I actually
Yeah.
have a conversation with them beforehand and say, look, Jack, I know you were saying, you're an introvert or you like to think about things. This is what I'm going to be bringing up on the agenda on Monday. I'd love some of your thoughts beforehand, or I'd love
Yeah.
you to give your point. Do you think those sort of ways of a leader, not adjusting the way they are, but just adapting to
Hmm,
their team
hmm.
to get the best out of them?
Absolutely. And knowing what you just said is a wonderful example. I heard that from many people who said, give me an agenda. Just let
Yes.
me ponder what we're going to be talking about. Then
Mm.
I can give better input. If you even stop by my office or give me a text and say, I'm going to ask you to just really highlight what the team's been doing on this. That's gold to
Yes.
introverts. I was going to tell you, as you were talking, I was thinking about conversations with servers at bars,
Mm.
in check-in, and I thought, wouldn't it be great with the trainings if we could do what we teach people in sales, which is to role play?
Mm.
People don't like that,
No.
but I think really what we've noticed, and I just have personal observations since COVID, and the opportunity wasn't there for young people especially
Mm.
to kind of lubricate the wheels of
Yes.
what you were describing, Michelle, which is rapport building.
Yes.
So,
Mm.
sometimes I can tell when a server is perhaps introverted. I was talking with some about her name. It was Jenna, something like she spelt the beginning like my name. And you could tell she really didn't know how to respond. So I kind of made it a little easy because, as my mother-in-law used to say, she's like, I'm like you, Michelle, I can get a tree to talk. So, so then we moved on to another topic. But wouldn't it be great if we could give people a little practice
Yeah.
in that rapport building, that because that is a big part of their job, and being
Mm.
able to respond
Yes.
to, and to feel comfortable about that.
Mm.
Like people are going to ask you anything,
Yeah.
right? About your name, what else? Where are you from? What's that accent? What country are you from?
Definitely.
You're going to probably get tired of that,
Yes.
but you want to have a way to respond that shows poise, that represents your brand, where
Mm.
you feel comfortable. So,
Yes.
we used to do that in sales training, right? To do
Mm.
role plays. And people would always go, "Oh God, I don't like that." But that was really the best way to learn,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
and it's just to have that conversation because I'm just
Yes,
finding a lot of them just don't know how to start that conversation, how to break it.
true.
So it was quite interesting, and it just reminded me because I'd written a whole piece as I was in the States and completely forgot about it. Was that when we were staying at the Westin at Anaheim, I noticed when we were having dinner and then breakfast the next day that on their name badge they would have their name, but beside it would be "My passion is," and it would be something. And one girl had food, one girl had family,
I
another had
love that.
traveling. And I thought, this is fantastic. So we had Lauren for our breakfast, and she was lovely. And I said, "Oh, I've noticed your passion is traveling." Well, she had a lovely conversation about how, her husband had been with another big major hotel chain before they had children, all the places they'd moved and all the different states they'd lived in. Now they had children, they'd bought a van, a little RV, and so they were doing that. I said, "Oh my goodness." I said, "My daughter has a very big business here in Australia with outfitting RVs in all
Oh,
accessories
really?
and caravans." And she goes, "Oh my goodness, what's his name?" So here I am, my husband, who's the introvert, he's just looking there going, "Seriously, you'd sell ice to an Eskimo, Michelle." And I say, but it was just a conversation. I said, it wasn't, here we are, sign up the invoice order. But I was saying, "Oh, go on." And I thought, here, and that was all came from her name badge saying, "My
Thank you.
passion
I
is
love it.
traveling."
I love it.
And I
Now,
thought, there's a conversation. Mm.
I'm laughing because my father-in-law was very good at doing that. And she'd always turn to me and she said, "Jennifer, watch, our order is going to be messed up." Because they were having such a good time. So you have to know also how to cut it off because you are going to get chatty Cathy customers. Not
Yeah,
saying, Michelle, you are one, but people oftentimes say that in networking events who are introverts.
yes,
Here I am in a one-to-one conversation. It's going well, but then I need to mingle, right? So
yes,
how do
yes.
I extricate myself? So my quick tip for that is go see somebody else near you who has a name tag and just say, "Michelle, have you met John?"
That's
Right? And
right. Bring them in.
edge out of the thing. You know how to do that. But I love it. No, what you were talking about, I did see at a conference that I spoke at recently at SHRM, and what they had was well, kind of similar to we had the speakers. They had you would pick a button that said what your industry was. So
Ah,
whatever you choose, some people in hotels also will say where they're from, like what where they were born.
yes, yes.
Anything to start the conversation, as you say, that makes it easier to
Yeah,
begin.
it does. It's because it's something about them. There's something, but it's not just spotlighting the person, but it's spotlighting where they're from, that they can make that
Yes.
connection. And that was, in the very early days of Disney, particularly when I went, to your near where you are in Orlando, was in Disney World, how each person had the flag and the country that they were from, which was
Yeah.
another great conversation starter, but it also assisted those that English wasn't their first language. Now, here in
Oh,
Australia, like America, we are a
mhm.
multinational country, and
Yeah.
therefore we have a lot of people that English is not the first language. And so, for one venue many years ago, I said to them, "Why don't we start doing the same thing? Maybe not having the name badge, but making it really easy for our members and guests that come in, and if they've got a question, it doesn't always have to be an issue, a question, they could go up and speak to somebody, and we would find them, or the team would find them somebody in the team who spoke that language or knew a customer who spoke that
Mhm.
language. Let's make it easier." And to me, it's a bit like language is very much like that introvert and extrovert. Let's try and match them with the people that's going to make them feel this is a really wonderful experience. Whether
No,
it's teach,
absolutely.
yeah. Mm.
I love that. All of those ideas.
So it's just little things. So now you're saying introverts are half of the workplace. So
Yeah.
how do we get them to actually see what they have inside them, that potential to
Mhm.
go out and seek that management role? Or are they waiting to be tapped on the shoulder?
Yeah, now you did refer to that question earlier.
Mhm.
It's not, well, sometimes they are waiting, and that's why I suggest people do open up the conversation. There's a chapter in our book about managing up.
Mm.
But I think it starts with ourselves. Any individual self leadership, is really what it is. We need to get in touch with our strengths. And I do have a model in all of my books, and we did keep the model in this one, the four P's. And if you'll indulge me, I'll just
Yes.
this all came from the introverted leaders I interviewed. As you mentioned, qualitative research. I interviewed and surveyed hundreds of leaders across the years here, and we keep updating our research on this. And the four P's is kind of where it falls. It's a leadership development model that builds on that idea of build on your quiet strengths. So the first one is prepare. And, we heard that a lot, by the way, at the conference about preparing, right?
Yeah.
That preparing is the ace in the hole for introverts. Because I mentioned extroverts tend to not prepare a lot because they can wing it. But that's not always the best, right? If you're prepared, whether it's for your the morning when you're going to look right, when you have your protocol and your systems and procedures in your head, you've gotten all that straight, then you can go to the next P, which is being in the moment, presence. And having presence allows you to do the things we've been discussing: listening, being calm, being open, just breathing, those kinds of things.
Yes.
Where you can then pick up on maybe there's some problems, or maybe I need to connect with this person. So doing the preparation allows you then not to worry about, well, did I do this or did I do that, or worry about the future. You are in the moment, and we all know how important and how valued that is.
Yes.
To be aware of what is going on. And in hospitality, as you know, things are changing every minute, right? From a fire alarm to what happened? We overbooked we double booked rooms, or whatever it might be. You have to remain calm and in the moment and not be worrying that, oh, didn't we do this or didn't we do that? So being present is a real asset. That's another thing introverts do very well. And then the third one that was interesting, that is push. And what I mean by that is stepping out of your comfort zone and developing other strengths. Maybe more of the extroverted strengths, where you are able to, let's say, maybe make a presentation if you haven't done that before. You're able to network in your own way and go to an event, but do it in a way that suits you so that you can, again, prepare, but push yourself to talk to some people you don't know. We were just at a conference where it would be very comfortable to just stay in our little friend groups, right? But you and I had to push ourselves. And that way you learn. That way you expand your skills, your strengths. And by the way, people that are introverted who are very successful, many people who watch them and observe them think that they're not introverts. Like they'll say, they're not an introvert. And they go, you have no idea.
Yes.
What I need is to recharge and to not have stimulation all the time. But I've learned, because I've prepared, I've been present, and I've pushed. Then the fourth one is practice. And that's refining that skill. It's putting yourself in situations where you can, it's like a muscle. You keep it up, right?
Yes.
The great virtuosos do that. You and I saw an incredible, I imagine you were at that performance of the ninjas.
Yes.
These young men who, if they don't practice, they're going to get stale. They're going to fall off those things.
Yes.
So they practice all the time. And the great virtuosos do it. We all need to keep doing it to keep that muscle going. Like I mentioned about the conversations that got stale, right? People didn't know how to begin a conversation. We need to practice that. And then that becomes a lot more fluent in our repertoire.
Yes.
So the four P's: prepare, presence, push, and practice. And in the book, we have that for every type of leadership scenario. We have different chapters on leading, on, as I said, managing up, networking, public speaking. That's applied in all of those situations, so that you, again, don't change who you are, but you build on that strength.
Yes, build on that strength. Now, this is the third edition of the Introverted Leader, and I'm going to put in the show notes the link to your website, because there's little excerpts there from the book, which is what I shared right at the start of this podcast, just a little excerpt from that. But it is absolute gold, Jennifer. So where can they purchase the book as well?
Oh, everywhere the books are sold.
Okay.
And reviews can be left on Amazon now. That's a new change. Without buying it on Amazon, you can buy it wherever. There's bookshop.org. There's Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And we, by the way, on the website under our books tab, jenniferkahnweiler.com, we have several chapters, Michelle, that are free to download. So you can see if you're interested in the book. And we have that for all four books, which I probably should mention the other ones, which
Yes, so
came out
please
of
do.
that, just briefly. The Introverted Leader was first, and certainly this new edition is we have a big focus on remote and hybrid work and how
Mm,
that connects with introverts and how they can really thrive in those scenarios. And then we have the second book was Quiet Influence,
mm,
doing some of the things we've talked about. How do you leverage the strengths to actually make a difference? It not necessarily lead, but get your idea heard, create change, inspire people.
mm.
And so that one came after, and it's still selling, the Introverted Leader. That's Quiet Influence. And then we moved into teams, which is Introverts and Extroverts. That's the genius of opposites. Oh, actually, on YouTube, we've show it there. And that's how
Perfect.
1 + 1 is more than two. It's exponential. And then
Yes.
the one that came out a few years ago in COVID was how do you create cultures and environments
Mm.
that support introverts? And there are things that managers and everybody can do so that you feel like introverts have a chance and they're not always adapting to the way we want it.
Yes, yes.
So,
And yeah, so I said I'll put those links in there, but I love how you give just those couple of little, as you said, some of the information that's there in the book, a couple of those chapters, because it's just a great way to learn about you, but learn about all the research and study that you've done. And that
thank
of
you.
course, then people can certainly purchase the book because what I like is that you've gotten, you came across this because you were married to Bill, and then you've developed these so many of these programs, but you've learned so much and you continue to learn. But
Yes.
then it's this sharing and or even though in the hospitality industry we can't really do much from home, from remote work, we need people to be there serving at the tables, at the bar, in the
Yeah,
entertainment, in the hotels. But there
true.
is this large community that have come out of COVID with this remote, this hybrid workplace. And I've said it's always very easy just to, push that button as we probably did a few times during COVID of, oh, I don't really am tired of hearing that person. So we push the button and, oh, what a shame. Or don't put on the camera, whatever it might be. But we can't
Yeah.
do that in real life. And I think that's where
No.
we've found it a little, some people have found it quite hard that they can't just push that button. Maybe their face looks like they've pushed that button, but they
Yeah.
can, they've checked out. But can you give some tips? Because there's a lot of other people that listen to this podcast,
Yeah.
not just our beautiful hospitality industry, in
Yeah.
how do we look at that hybrid workplace for introverts and how do they connect with extroverts and other introverts that they don't always get to see face to face, but perhaps like what we are here on Zoom?
Yeah, it's great. Well, I think the positive is, Michelle, now that we have options, we have more choices than we had in the past.
Mm.
Make work work for introverts and extroverts. So, and for everybody, let's face it. I think we were stumbling around, during COVID trying to make that work. And then as now we have more companies now pulling people back to the office, I
Yeah.
think it has to be very intentional based on a couple things, based on the job requirements,
Yes.
and introverts in the beginning of our surveys of COVID, they loved it. Everybody was like 95% of 240 people I remember we surveyed said this is the best thing. As time went on, loneliness has set
Yeah.
in and disconnection in terms of job performance. People felt, and this is still a challenge we face, but it's getting better, is that we were focused on talking to our own teams. But
Yes.
what
Yes.
about, walking to the lounge and running into somebody in marketing and you're in finance and you learn about the larger context of what's going on a project and how it helps you perform, how
Mm.
you develop relationships. So I think what we're finding is the best solution, and the experts in this in remote hybrid are saying that hybrid is really the best if you can work that out. But planning those days so you're in the office and you're having a chance to connect with people, not just on Zoom,
Mm.
like you could be doing at home.
Yes. Yes.
The commute time is certainly a concern to people. Many introverts actually have told me, though, that they enjoy that commute time because it's their only time they have between work and home
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
to separate. So I think it really does take a lot of discussion, a lot of like checking in with your team as time is going on now to see what's working, what isn't. But it
Mm.
really does come down to the job and considering the personality of the person as well. How can they be more productive?
Yeah.
And not letting that isolation or that disconnection affect performance.
Mm. And it's so true because we've just we need to connect with people. We saw that when we came out of COVID, that people just
Yes.
rushed together and said, "Oh, it's so nice." But then it was that pulling back. How do we work together? And it breaks
Yes.
down those myths also that we have about
Mhm.
people, about whether perhaps if they're from a different culture or they're a different age. So when we've got them together and we're having those conversations, we get to see that they're real people, that they're just like us.
Exactly.
And how do we have those conversations and communicate? I could talk all day with you, Jennifer, and
I
talk.
could talk with you all day, but we have to do it again sometime for
Oh, We,
sure.
we we do, but what I'd like to ask you just one more question because we've really
Mhm.
spoken about how does the manager work with his team of introverts and extroverts and how they connect with the customer. But do you just have one or perhaps two tips on the introverted manager? How do they own their strengths?
Yes. Well, I think number one, they need to step into their knowledge of themselves, do that self-awareness, that emotional intelligence, being proud of their strengths and what they have, and also being aware of where their challenges and their weaknesses might bump up against what the company expectations are. So
Mm,
having that deep self-awareness is the first thing. And the second thing is being transparent with your team, understanding who they are, finding out what, as you said, communication, what's their preference in terms of how they let their work style, but
yeah.
being open about yours as well.
Mm,
And it's not a one-time conversation, Michelle. It has to happen on a regular basis. This we found also during COVID, I think we all learned how important it was to check in with people. And
yes.
in those check-in conversations, we can find out from our introverts and our extroverts, are you being heard? Are you feeling like your input is being valued?
Mm,
Where are the problems? Again, you as an introverted leader, once you recognize that strength, and I've interviewed, believe me, hundreds of them, and it's so incredibly gratifying to see them say, "Look, I'm not going to change to become somebody else," and stand up to their senior leaders.
yes. Yes.
Say, and so if you're not hearing from me talk a lot in the meeting, wait for the recap. I'll give you the best recap available, right? Or I'll email you afterwards with my thoughts, or being not being ashamed to own how
Yeah.
you do it best, but
Yeah.
also being willing to understand the company culture and
Mm,
where you can fit in.
yeah.
So,
It's all about working together. Thank you so much. Now, Jennifer, you haven't mentioned your website address so they can
oh, okay.
find you on the web.
Well, right. Well, it's Jennifer Kahnweiler. That's KAHNWEILER.com. We have a giveaway if you go onto the website, and that is a quiet wrap-up journal. That's a two-pager that you can write online on the computer, and just kind of help yourself self-reflect about what's working for you, what you're learning. And again, as I mentioned, that's the ace in the hole. That's the real strength of an introvert, to know yourself.
Yes.
So it'll help you do that. And also tune into our podcast. We're going into season 4 soon. And we've had some incredible guests talking about how we can be, it's called the Introvert Ally. You can find it on all the podcast platforms, and how you can be an ally, whether you're an introvert or extrovert. And every extrovert has introverts in their life, believe
Yes.
me, that you can support, and learn yourself on how to tap into that side of yourself, because we're not one dimensional.
No, definitely not. So I'll put all those links for the podcast, both your
Thank you.
and also your website. I thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining me today to share with my audience about what you've learned and the research and all the work that you've done with introverts in the workplace. And I wish you all the very best for your third edition of the Introverted Leader. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Michelle, it's been a pleasure. It always is. Great to hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Yes. Bye.